Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As I stand still here today, the world around us is yet moving, and in all directions possible, but still towards one goal. We humans have been constantly trying to modify, perfect, alter, or fix our world so that it could meet one's version of utopia. When asked about our definition of utopia or our perception of what a better world could possibly be like, we respond by a world where there would be less diseases. What could happen when our reality becomes our utopia? And this brings me to my point today, which is that this house refuses a world where all children are genetically enhanced. Because does genetic enhancement help us reach our goal? With all the risks and safety issues that this decision is yet to bring, is it really worth it to put the upcoming generations into this type of danger? Human germline modification, it means changing the genes passed on to children and future generations in other worlds, creating genetically modified people. Human germline modification has for many years been widely considered off limits for both safety and social reasons. It is formally prohibited in more than 40 countries. Should these new techniques be used to engineer the traits of future children who would pass their altered genes to all generations that follow? This is not an entirely new question. The prospect of creating genetically modified humans was openly debated back in the late 1990s, more than a decade and a half before CRISPR came on the scene and several years before the human genome had been fully mapped. In recent years, a new generation of genetic engineering techniques, also known as gene editing, has prompted speculation about their use in human embryos or gametes. In 2014, rumors intensified about researchers in the US and China working on human embryos with the inexpensive, easy-to-use gene editing tool CRISPR. In April 2015, a research team at Sun Yat-sen University in China published a report of an experiment in which they used CRISPR to edit a gene associated with the blood disease in non-viable human embryos. This experiment was totally unsuccessful. Before I state the reasons of why this house stands strongly against the idea of a world where all children are genetically enhanced, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that it would be difficult to distinguish between a medical and enhancement purpose for germline modification.
Point of information.
No, thank you. The issue of whether our world would be positively or negatively affected by genetically enhancing our children has been discussed in statements and reports produced by research institutions. In April of 2015, Francis Collins, director of the National Institutes of Health, spoke up about gene editing technology and its relationship to federal research funding. In his words, the NIH will not fund any use of gene editing technology in human embryos. These techniques include serious and immeasurable safety issues, ethical issues involving germline modification that affect future generations without their consent. In the article entitled "Don't Edit a Human Germline" posted by Nature, Edward Dampier and colleagues stated that gene somatic cell editing is a promising therapeutic tool, but the risks of a germ cell editing will make it dangerous and ethically unacceptable. It has been also stated that risks include random mutations occurring in the modified gene, disastrous consequences for future generations, extrapolation of the procedure for non-therapeutic purposes, and negative impact on social perception of automatic cell editing. As the Center of Genetic Society stated, efforts to genetically engineer future children and generations would be unsafe, medically unnecessary, and profoundly damaging to social justice and human rights.
Point of information.
No, thank you. In other words, human germline gene editing would constitute inherently unsafe human experimentation, putting any resulting children at extreme risk of harm and effectively irresistible genetic changes. It would distort family and other relationships by encouraging notions of human beings as biologically perfected artifacts. It could also easily lead to a future society of genetics haves and have-nots, with new forms of inequalities and biological discrimination on top of already existing ones. Moreover, experiments with human germline intervention could lead to miscarriages, maternal injuries, and stillbirth.
Point of information.
Thank you. No, thank you. Genetically modified children who seem healthy at birth could develop serious problems later in life. Some perhaps introduced by enhancements. Harmful consequences of germline modification might only present themselves in subsequent generations. Plus, genes have multiple factions, so modifying one that causes stated, the knockout of the and the government stated that gene enhancement would definitely reduce HIV, but however, the knockout of the CCR5 gene, yes, it would reduce the chances of HIV infection, but it would make the individual more susceptible to the West Nile virus.
Point of information.
No, thank you. And as the government also stated that this would help us reach our full potential in whatsoever, that allow me please to use the movie Lucy as an example. When we use our full capacity, it could do us more harm than good. There is an obvious reason to why we have not been using our full potential, because when we do so, we tend to widen our mind capacity to an extent where it's hard to comprehend our abilities, and we will only be driving ourselves insane.
Point of information.
No, thank you. With that being said, our world is better off without genetically enhanced generations. As long as humanity exists in one's heart and mind, one cannot force changes or modifications on people without their consent. Thank you.